Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and call this municipal audit committee meeting to order. We are noticed today, January 31st, from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. All right, let's go ahead and start with introductions.
Kevin Cross.
Scott Myers.
Felix Rivera.
Alden Clarn, CFO.
Michael Cipriano.
Scott Lee, Acting Internal Audit Director.
And I'm Joy Mariner with BDO.
Great, and then on the phone we have Randy Solt.
Here, thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so we just have a couple of items on our agenda today. Thanks for meeting this week. I know we had tried to avoid having any committee meetings or other meetings this week, but this was one that we could not avoid. So let's go ahead and start under new business. Item A, 2024 Municipal Audit Plan. Mr. Lee, if you can go ahead and just walk us through the 2024 audit plan to start, and then I have a few questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Through the chair to audit committee members, here I present 2024 draft annual audit plan. Anchorage Municipal Code 3.20.110 requires that internal audit director should, no later than January 31st of each year, prepare a drafted annual audit plan and submit the draft audit plan to the municipal audit committee members for review and comment, and finalize the plan and submit it to the municipal audit committee for the final review and endorsement. So I am seeking endorsement today. In December, we sent the email to each assembly members and members of the administration and all the directors of the department, soliciting the audit suggestion for 2024. And from the suggestion, we put together this draft audit plan front of you. And there are some audits that is required code, such as police and fire retiree medical trust 3-year review, and all the sunset audits listed here. And if you have any other questions, I'm open to the questions and comment.
Great, thanks so much. Actually, can you walk us through this document? Because this is the first time that this document has been prepared for this committee, and just what this is telling us. And sorry, for Mr. Solt on the phone, it's the document called Audits Removed from the Audit Plan is the title of the document.
Thank you.
No, Mr. Rivera, that is incorrect. The title should be 2024 draft audit plan, but it was my mistake. I did not correct that.
Thanks. Right, so can you just tell us a little bit about what this document is communicating?
Mr. Rivera, the document from you does not look like the document I provided for the review.
Okay, maybe this is just an extraneous document that we weren't meant to receive, which is totally fine. Okay, then a few questions for me, and then if other members have questions, please get in the queue. And then the intent is, after we review this audit plan, is to have a motion and a vote for us to endorse the audit plan and send it to the assembly for approval. So, first question. Oh, go ahead.
What did you have to make a comment, Scott?
Actually, Mr. Rivera, Mr. Arden had this 2024 draft audit plan I provided.
I think it's the Word document versus the
Excel document.
So that is that document there, the one I'm pointing at. That one.
Yeah.
That's the one that you provided. Is that the one that you're expecting to do audits for this coming year, or what is your expectation of that document? I think that's what they were. We'll get off the landscape one, but what audits are you expecting to do this year for them to approve?
Correct. Pretty much correct, Mr. Ryan, that's correct. That's the draft audit plan we are planning to do this year.
Great, thank you for that clarification. So did any audits get removed from the 2024 draft audit plan? Put it another way, were you able to, are all the audits on this plan the ones that were submitted by either assembly members or members of the administration? In prior years, the internal audit has had to remove audits from the list because there's just been too many submitted, and so you can complete them in a year. So I just wanted to get a sense of the burden on the department. Are you able to complete all of the audits that get submitted to you? Those kinds of issues.
Mr. Rivera, that is correct. Due to the staffing shortage and some other challenges we are experiencing, and some audits are no longer relevant to our business this year, we have removed a couple audits. I do not remember exactly what those audits I removed, but I can provide those lists to you if you request it. That is no problem.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lee. I think it would be helpful to just get a sense of what those audits are. Can you tell me what your current staffing is?
Other than position of our Mr. Rivera, other than position of our director, we are fully staffed.
Okay, so just one vacancy in the department. And then, so a couple other questions. When, I don't see the language access audit on here, and if, as I recall from a previous conversation, you were expecting to get that published in January or February of this year. Is that still the case?
Mr. Rivera, yes, that is correct. We finished the language access audit, and we received the final audit response from the administration last week, and that report is being finalized, and that report should be released for either next week or week after.
Great, thank you. Yeah, because there's a lot of interest in that one. All right, wonderful. Then I get why it's not on this plan, because it's pretty much done. And then I did have one, and maybe it's just required by code and you don't have any leeway here, but the Houseless Lived Experience Advisory Board is on here as one of the 2024 sunset audits. And that particular board just started meeting. It had its second meeting last month. And I'm just wondering if we have the flexibility to push the audit for that particular board, or does the code tell us we have to do an audit for that board?
Mr. Rivera, the code requires most of the committee and board, municipal committee and board that does not have a sunset, that doesn't have a sunset provisions to be audited for sunset audit every 3 years. And that Houseless Lived Experience Advisory Board is due for sunset audit this year, according to the code.
Okay, got it. So then that's fair. It might be a very slim audit because they, again, just started meeting, but I think that's fair. You have to do it per code. Okay, those were all the questions that I had. Any other questions from members about the 2024 audit plan?
You covered it.
Yeah.
Same questions I have. I guess I have one general one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, just generally speaking, are there certain departments that as you work through audits, like I'm just curious which ones are probably the most complex? Which audits that you have to perform are typically the largest workload and I wouldn't necessarily say frustrating, but the most complicated for you to do an audit? Which departments would they be? Out of curiosity.
The chair, Mr. Cross, I do not remember or believe there is a complexity associated with the department itself, but because we are performing the compliance and performance study, the complexity of the program itself or contract itself will give us the harder time, but not per department.
Thank you.
Okay, no. Go ahead.
I'm gonna make just one comment since I see my name on the risk management one, and I just want to get it out there. I don't know if the audit was ever done or not done, but I did bring back, looks like 4 years ago now, that's a long time, when we were selling MLP, and we had a variety of facilities and so forth that we were handing over to Chugach at that time. I came across ones where we were matching up what insurance we had on those buildings, and we had gotten rid of some buildings in the past, and we were still paying insurance on it. So I thought that at the time we were selling MLP, we should probably do an audit of all the buildings that we own in the municipality of Anchorage and what insurance are we paying on and so forth. And I became very, obviously I've moved on to other issues at that point in time, but at that point in time, there were some items that were sold or disposed of, might be a better way, in previous years. And you know how municipality, buys and sells properties and buildings and moves them around. I don't know if they ever talk to, because the insurance of those is in risk management, so you'd actually have to get real estate to be talking to risk management, to be talking with Lance's area, and communication sometimes doesn't actually come through, and we've lost a lot of people in risk management as well. So if anybody cares, I just saw my name there, and that was what the intent of that audit was, is that I was fearful, because what I was seeing is we were actually paying insurance on pieces of property that we didn't even have anymore for whatever reasons. And as we were getting rid of MLP, we were losing a lot of substations and facilities. And I thought, well, maybe after that sale, that's why you can see it's September 29th, because the MLP sale was October 30th of 2020. So that's why it was picked up at that point in time. So, trying to always save a buck, but that was the intent of that. And Scott can answer if that ever happened and if that audit was ever performed or not, I don't know. But I just see my name there, so I felt like I needed to say at least something about that. All the rest of those people are gone.
Through the chair, Mr. Arden, I don't remember that audit was ever performed, therefore never ever completed.
Go ahead.
Actually, I think you're onto something that would be very curious, which is, right now we're talking about, the possibility of allowing more people to work from home, telecommute, in order to attract more employees. But I don't know if an audit's ever been done, or how often that's done of our vacancies. We have vacancies, we know what the positions are, but how much extra office space we have. I know in Elmore, when I go through, like you go through the real estate department and HLB stuff, that's vast real estate of open office space that's not being utilized. It makes me wonder how much, not just properties that we own that are, that have fallen off, but just how much open space we are paying to heat, insure, and maintain. That would be very interesting algorithm. That'd be like knowing your vacancy factor on any kind of investment property. You want to know how much of it is not performing. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Member Haas. I think that's an interesting point. It's always interesting in this committee. I've been a part of this committee for years now, not always as chair, and there are always a lot of different ideas that get brought up in this committee. I think some ideas, though. I'm just looking on this sheet, and it says this is a research project, and those kinds of things I think aren't things that internal audit does. They don't really do research projects. They do audits of contract compliance, audits of code compliance, those kinds of things. So could you just speak to Mr. Lee about sort of the limits of what internal audit should be doing or can be doing?
Yes, contrary to popular belief, our office rarely perform the financial audit because municipal financial audit is performed by BDO or external auditors, and we are performance auditors and compliance auditors. So I like to draw the little line there. If we get a request for the financial audit, that would be more realm of the, professionals, BDO. Also, we try to avoid the audit that provide the management decisions or because we are auditors, we are not management, so we can assess the management decision made by the entity. However, we should not be the one who provides the management decision. Actually, our government acting standard yellow prohibits that specifically for us from providing the management decision.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. So then, for ideas that like Member Cross just brought up, I guess maybe to you, Mr. Third, is this something that like we would ask BDO to do? Is that something internally that would be done?
I think it would be an internal thing. It's not really a BDO thing, but unfortunately, there are situations that come up every year where we need a third. You're looking for internal audit is considered to be an independent third party. So they unfortunately get drafted into certain circumstances that come up, such as maybe there's a legal matter that's happening and there needs to be a reconciliation of billing statements, and you want somebody who can look at it with an eye not on management side where you're always trying to ding the vendor and so forth. You want it to be as impartial as possible, and internal audit has the enviable task of being seen as that. So they get drafted into unforeseen numerical calculation type things where they are asked to do these kind of projects. Those projects have to happen. It's not, I've been here long enough to see that you don't know what it's going to be, but 2 or 3 times a year, you're going to need somebody that can go through it. Now, could I do it? Absolutely. Is that the best use of my time? Probably not. And will I take an administrative slant on if I have to make decisions as I'm going through there, because I'm maybe always tied to how much money we're going to be getting. So those types of things come up, and I don't know of an entity that is really, if I look at the finance areas, it doesn't belong in Treasury, their revenue. Controller's Department is basically expenditures, but OMB is budget. Public Finance is doing it. So there's not really a department there that you would say, not that some of those people couldn't be tasked with that, but it is away from what their core missions are. So how do you get that work done, and who do it, and then more importantly, how do you do it where it's supposedly as fair and unbiased as possible? And so Scott, I know I've gone down there and I've asked them to do things. They get tied into these kind of things because that's the way they're seen. Even like running the Cs for union negotiations. That's another way that they get pulled into the thing to validate and look at it. So I think that's the challenge of what they can do. I think it goes back to your question earlier. Can they, is there anything they have to pull out and so forth? Unfortunately, there's probably some things that never get put on the list that they're asked to do, and some of those are fairly significant financial. But you're doing like auditing work. You see what I'm saying? You're taking a bunch of transactions and you're taking invoices and bills maybe, and you're trying to see it and pay stubs and all that kind of stuff. You are auditing, so it is a form of an audit, and that's why they get drafted in doing that. So I think the project or the idea Mr. Cross brought forward falls in that particular category. Again, it's just. Where does it fit? And it may not fit anywhere, and they get a couple of those things a year where it's determined that they're the most usable department to help do these types of things.
Great.
Scott has done a heck of a job since Chadwick left, though. I know he didn't want to take the job. He still doesn't want to take the job, but he has done a great job managing it and so forth.
I do have a question about a specific audit that was last year and there was following up, and that was the one that was conducted from the Anchorage Health Department on the Chuyak Senior Center. I knew that they had multiple issues. Most of it had to deal with their previous bookkeeper, an individual who was doing that, had a family tragedy, and then they ended up having to leave. They were trying to find someone else to fill that position. They got behind. Do we know what the status is of them meeting their compliance? It's been an issue because as long as the senior center is behind on compliance and not meeting their audit requirements, they don't get funds that have been set aside and released, right? So they have to meet certain criteria in order to receive the matching funds, receive funds from Municipal of Acreage. And therefore, they run into funding issues, and it's kind of like a snake eating its own tail, right? They need money to complete the audits and do audits, but we won't pay them if they get it done. But they got behind because of it. So, do we know where they're at in that process? I haven't heard an update in a long time. It's been several months. I knew they were supposed to meet some provisions by the end of 2023. And now it just occurred to me as we sat here that, oh, wait a second, did they meet those criteria they were supposed to hit by January 1st of this year? I don't know if anybody has known or if that is more appropriately questioned for the health department. I just know it's an audit, and so since this is the conversation at hand, thank you.
Through the chair, Mr. Cross, unfortunately, I do not know the current status of that Chuyak Senior Center. Municipal code actually prohibits us from doing assessing the effect of our recommendation. That responsibility lays upon the municipal manager's office and each individual department.
Excellent. I guess, yes, that makes much more sense. You're just providing the reports, and it's up to the department heads and directors in order to enforce your directions. All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
If you can introduce yourself.
Through the chair, Mr. Cross, Charles Gunther, Department of Law. So I heard your question. I'm familiar with that because that hit our desk. Some questions about that issue. I will say my understanding is that there has been ongoing non-compliance. I'm not that familiar with the background. I mean, I knew that my understanding is there's been repeated requests for audits, and the last I heard was that the senior center was actively refusing to provide audits. They said they weren't going to do it. So there may be interesting to hear your that there may be extenuating circumstances why it wasn't done. But I guess the health department has been working with them to ask for audits. That they were told that wasn't going to happen. I understand there's a new executive director, perhaps, or some new leadership over there.
Forgive me, Phil Marquardt, I think was his name, retired, I want to say it was about 3 months ago, and so they have a new director in there, and so I don't know if that's a change in direction, because my conversations with the previous director, Phil, were, here's the issue, and he was over-communicative. I got an update from him about once a month. Here's what we're doing, we recognize the problem, and we're making strides, and so maybe we need to have a new conversation with the new director.
From what I understand, they have, they're interviewing right now for a new executive director. So
Okay.
the interim one is the one going in, and that was one of the things on the list was completed audit.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for that. Any other discussion on the audit before I ask for a motion? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to recommend approval of the 2024 audit plan to the assembly? So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Can you do a roll call vote, please?
Member Rivera?
Yes.
Member Myers?
Yes.
Member Cross?
Yes.
Member Schultz?
Yes.
Sorry, I don't remember, I didn't think he was, but.
And then the administration members.
Member Colhase is absent. Member Thurn?
Yes.
Member Cipriano?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Great, thank you. All right, so then this will be before us at the February 13th meeting for a vote. Thank you so much for your work, Mr. Lee, and for the department's work on this.
Thank you.
All right, so then the next item on our agenda is a BDO update on the ACFR. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm always glad to see what your audit plan is for internal audit. I don't know if you know this, but part of our audit procedures allow us to rely on internal audit work that has been done. We review their reports, the results of their reports. If they identify things that we need to be paying attention to at the higher level, we incorporate that into our audit procedures. So I always like getting a sneak peek at what will happen in the future. So thank you very much for your hard work in getting internal audit lined out for the new year. Really, you know, we as BDO, or CREW, as the audit committee and the assembly, so we've been trying to be over communicative this year, hopefully even getting our weekly messages. There was a little bit of a blip. We closed for the week between Christmas and New Year's. And actually we closed the day before that, so we missed a couple of weeks there with the holidays. And then our contract expired at the end of December, so Mr. Chair got a call and I said, we've got to do something because I technically am working on your audit and not allowed to be working on your audit. So we did get that extension, so these started back up. But I thought, and I appreciate you calling me in to have hopefully a Q&A. The updates have been updated and hopefully have been useful to you. I realize they don't change a whole lot necessarily from week to week. I just know there's still a lot of work being done. The Civic and AWU are both essentially ready to finalize, to issue. AWU were waiting on a final report draft change. They were including, I'm looking at the back here, they were including lease interest income in a calculation for their debt covenant. One way in water and the other way in wastewater, so they were fixing that on their statements. But really, I would just say that AWU statements are done. We're ready to go on that one. I'm waiting on a couple pieces of paperwork. We'll send them the rep letter as soon as we have their final drafts, and I can tie those out with that minor change, a couple changes on the table of contents, those kinds of things. We are reporting one finding on AWU that's actually the same finding on Civic. It'll be the same finding on all the municipal entities, and that has to do with just the timing of the issuance of the audit. Being, there's been delays in getting the financial statements closed. It affects AWU tangentially. Really their books were closed, but they were waiting on some of the items that come through the municipality in order to close for AWU to issue. But I just want to just mention that AWU does an excellent job throughout the year. They drafted their own statements. They gave us initial drafts for those statements pretty early on, waiting for some of the things that came through from downtown. And I would also just recognize Casey was pretty key part in keeping Controller Division moving. When in that interim period, she stepped in with Grant to kind of keep Controller Division functioning until Michael could come in. And so I think they picked up a lot of things. They also took over for some period of time the Gas 87 lease project from downtown and kept that moving forward, and then Una's been finishing up that in the Controller Division. So lots going on for AWU this year. And that one, I'm hoping to be in date today. It might be tomorrow if we don't get their drafts by the end of today, but I'd really love to have a January date on it. So I think that's our goal. The other one that's been done for quite some time is Civic Ventures. We did have that same finding running through Civic, as well as one other item. And we were waiting on a corrective action plan. We received that for one of the findings last week. And I think this is just maybe a good reflection on your team doing everything they can to give us everything, but having not worked on the audit last year, this is a good example of some of the back and forth. So they gave us a corrective action plan, but when we ask for a corrective action plan, it's something that we've been doing for years, right? So it's standard. But it has to be in your letterhead, it has to be in a certain format. And so when it came to us, it was a corrective action plan, but it wasn't in the same format we've always received. And so I sent back that, this week we're like, well, what I really need is in this template with this letterhead. And so it's not that your team's not getting us stuff, there's just maybe a little more back and forth than we're used to, because what we're getting is maybe in a different format than is required, or what we needed actually to issue. So Civic, we're waiting on the final corrective action plan that addresses both findings as well as the subsequent events. So what has to happen with an audit in order to issue, we have to update anything that might have happened since year end. So for you, that's now 13 months. Anything that could have happened that would impact the financial statements through the date that we issue the audit. So mostly what we look at is a subsequent general ledger, looking for anything weird that may have occurred. We also update the legal attorney letter, which we have received. So as soon as we get those, I'm essentially ready to just put a pin in that one too. The test work on that has been done for several months. And we provided the final at the end of October. So, really I think the corrective action plans may be just something your management team's still working through. And when we kind of listed out at the bottom of the first page some of the areas that we're expecting to have a management response on. Your team also has a spreadsheet in Excel that's even more detailed. And then that's one of the focus areas we have right now is just writing up those findings in full detail so that the team on the media side can provide that corrective action. But they've had that list of kind of items that will require a response for a couple months now. I think that's going to be just a decision for them and how they want to word those corrective action plans for remediation of those areas. Otherwise, the next step, once AWU and Civic go out, just so you know, in order to issue AWU, we also had to have essentially all of the cash and investments that are pooled, audited, tested, reviewed by our second reviewer, and all of that. Same thing with pensions. So some of the things that run through the ACFR for the entire municipality flow through into AWU. Any of those things have been audited completely at the ACFR side because we have to pull them into the AWU audit in order to issue AWU. So that's done now for port, it's done for solid waste, it's done for the ACFR, it's done for all of them. Including, I would say, most of debt, all of cash that's pooled, and all of your pension stuff that's all completely done. Port and solid waste are pending the final grant schedule. So you do have grants that run through port and solid waste. Both of them are material amounts. And so the final grant schedules that agree out to the general ledger, we're still pending receipt of those. And so the next step for our team, starting tomorrow, after it was out, is going to be finalizing the solid waste draft. There are some entries, it looks like, that may be needing to get posted to the report from the detail statements that we did receive from your team. So we'll get that draft over to solid waste, so at least there may be some changes to it, but the hope is that they can draft their MD&A, which is the management discussion analysis, kind of their annual kind of description of what happened during the year, so she can draft that here over the next couple weeks. We did receive the MD&A from the port from Cheryl, so she's essentially got all of that done and drafted. It's incorporated into our draft. So now it's a matter of just tying out the grants, making any changes that result from the grant schedules. And the port will be the next one, is our goal to have the port out the door next, fall very closely behind by solid waste. Sorry,
Could I make
I know
one
I'm
comment?
driving through a lot.
One of the issues that we have, or at least I have, and I know it affects the controls department, is when any of these units don't have their own finance departments, like solid waste, the CFO walked out on October and they still don't have it, it puts a tremendous burden not only on the remaining people in that department, as well as the accounting staff who then, when issues come up, have to figure it out. So solid waste still does not have a CFO, and we're 3 or 4 months in there. So Jill, I'm sure, is doing a fabulous job out there, and she'll be the one doing these. But, and I've talked to the mayor about this as well, so I'm just kind of bringing this up. It's not always we are a decentralized, kind of a situation here. So to put everything on this accounting department, it all comes in and they have to work through it. But we do rely on these other entities to have their finance people do a lot of their own work to be able to do this. And when you have a head finance person at solid waste, or the other person picking it up, it does have a negative impact on the capability of many departments being able to deliver these types of things. So I always hear about, well, what can we do in the accounting department? Well, it's not just us. We've got to make sure the port's got their finance people, and solid waste has their finance people. And you know why AWU does well? Because they have finance people, but these other ones don't. Why? Because they pay more money. So there's a reason why these all financials, and as Joy talks about, they all roll up into the ACFR, but the individual ones have to be done before you can get to the big one, which is what he's responsible for. So as you're thinking and you're hearing about financials and what we're doing, I just ask people to think that there are more than just the accounting department in this building that are responsible for their financials, their numbers, and their reports. And the people that she's mentioning about MD&As, those are not Michael's people, those are the departments. And if they're not making a priority because they have to do something else, then it holds up. And then that one doesn't get done, which holds up something else. So just kind of a process thing. Just wanted to, it's not a BDO thing, but this is things that we deal with here when when other departments are not staffed in their finance areas. So,
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of circular references here, right? And that's always a challenge because, we've been contracted to help draft the solid waste services draft, which we're ready to do, and we pretty much have done. But there's a few key elements that come from either downtown or from solid waste in order to finish that. And Jill can't work on the MD&A really until the draft is pretty solid. So there's like everybody waiting on everybody else to finish all of these things. I would just say that, they're moving along really well. The files are looking pretty solid, but it just takes time for us to review, but also time for us to gather it. So an example, like Alden said, of things that we are finding that Yin's having to step into or Michael's having to step into is maybe, for example, calculation of their net investment in capital assets or calculation of debt covenants, where it's not entirely clear now whose role that is. Is it the CFO at Solid Waste who isn't there? Is it public finance who has some of the information? Is it accounting? Because it was done sort of by people who are no longer here, and maybe to some degree by a group of people who are no longer here. And so we're trying really hard to help facilitate where we can't do that work because we're not independent to do it. But also it's difficult when even Michael probably doesn't know sometimes who's the right person to do that. Is it going to be me? Is it going to be someone in my group? Is it public finance? Do I turn it back over to solid waste? And so there's some level of facilitation we're trying to do to help things move along in those areas.
Yeah, before you continue, I appreciate all of this back and forth because I think it is important for us to realize the complexity of this whole situation and why this has been continually delayed. It certainly does not fall on the backs of any one division. Certainly after the ACFR has been issued, which hopefully, this is going to be one of my questions, the last time I heard was by March, we should have the ACFR done. I hope that is still a realistic statement. But certainly after the issuance of the ACFR, because I don't want to get in the middle of things until then, I certainly want to dive into a lot of these issues more in detail and perhaps bring in some of the departments to talk with us about it to see how we as a committee can help smoothen the process, because this has been a very delayed process for a variety of reasons, and I think it's incumbent on us to understand that and see what we can do to help it out. With that, I'll turn it back to you to finish your update.
So I will just say, alongside AWU reports, always moving, the ACFR is not getting ignored, and we have our team who's working on linking everything, making sure the draft is moving forward. And then I'll just give Controller Division a big shout out, Union in particular. On Thursday, we had our meeting to go through kind of what we still have left on the ACFR, what questions we have. And she popped out with a spreadsheet on your GASB 34 conversion, which you probably don't want to know what that is, but your GASB 34 conversion, and she had it most of the way done. Now, we haven't audited it, but she had already taken the initiative to go through that conversion, get a lot of the numbers filled out. It's something that would take me personally probably a whole week, if I knew all the numbers. And she had already taken the initiative to do that. And so I was just really impressed with the proactivity on that. That means the ACFR draft moves along more quickly. So our goal is still to have an ACFR draft by the end of February. It might even be sooner than that now because of the efforts of the Controller Division to get a lot of the footnotes already lined out, a lot of the entries that they're not part of the funds. You don't actually post them. They're part of getting your long-term assets and liabilities onto the financials. When we come and present the ACFR, I'll show you what I mean. But it's essentially putting those kind of government-wide assets like capital assets and infrastructure assets, pension liabilities, some of those that aren't tracked at the fund level on. And she's taken initiative on that. The only thing I'll mention is we're having a meeting every week now with the team here about the ACFR draft. So answering our questions, I think we started last week with 33 or something questions we had. And this is where I did make it clear to the committee that I really need to make sure that we're never put in a position where we're making a management decision. or our independence is compromised. So some of these questions seem stupid sometimes, like, hey, we noticed this account has a negative number, it might need to be reclassified, these are the things we see, but we can't decide to reclassify it. We can't decide to disclose it as, something else. It has to be a decision. So we're trying to make sure that we're keeping track of those, that we're not making decisions along the way, and Yoon's been taking the lead with Michael on making sure that those questions get answered. And then identifying adjustments essentially along the way. There's quite a few things that she's identifying as she's answering these questions where maybe this is coded in the wrong place, or maybe we need to change the way this is presented on the statement. So a lot of back and forth happening in the background. It's not as if we tabled the ACFR and we'll pick it up when we're done with solid waste and port. It's rather they're running along in parallel, but my focus and Kelly Mays, who's my senior manager, our focus is on review and finalizing port and solid waste to come up. So port will probably be the next one out, solid waste after that, but I think tomorrow, Friday, Kelly will be focused on solid waste draft, so they can draft their MD&A, and then the port audit next. So things are moving. I would very much like your ACFR to be done, completely filed with the federal government by March 31, and we continue to move forward to a March 15th goal so that we can make March 31 happen. It's kind of like telling my children we have to be out of the door at 7:30 because, if you're not by 7:45, it's a big deal. So, I think we really need to just kind of help manage the process, and Alden has been great about just marching into the law's office when we need something, or really advocating for his team where he needs to. So I think things are moving along, and I'd love to try to get together with the community again before February's out to give you an update on where we stand with the ACFR draft, which is the biggest beast still left to be conquered, the big, huge draft of your entire financial statements. But a lot of progress has been made with the help of the Control Division to move it along. And then the only other thing I'll say is the corrective action plans for each of these entities, I'm hoping they don't take months to go through. So that's something that we'll prioritize getting the full write-up of the findings, but would be maybe a good question to be asking along the way as you have meetings without us there. How are we doing on the corrective action plans? Do you want to have a meeting or some advice from the audit committee on what those need to look like? Otherwise, I am out next week, so I won't be available. Thank you. I know there's a plane ticket to Hawaii in my future, and I haven't been on a vacation in a bit, so I'm very much looking forward to escaping the -6 on my truck right now. But I am not falling off the face of the earth. There is internet. I shouldn't tell people that there. But I don't anticipate there being any fires, and the team's well equipped to keep things moving while I'm gone. And I'll touch base with you after that.
Great, thank you so much for that thorough update. And yeah, we'll get a committee meeting scheduled in February so that you can give us another update. Any questions from members? All right, so then we don't have any other business, so we'll do audience participation. I don't see any audience members here. Do we have any on the phone?
No.
Okay, so then with that, we have